Tonight, a high-speed crash leads to a near disaster in a Brampton subdivision.
And I saw this shoo, literally it was flying.
Amazingly, no one, not even the driver, was seriously injured. And it comes just months after another crash happened on this very same street.
A living nightmare.
The Toronto homeowner who's had no water for days, struggling through a heat wave and the pandemic. And 6 outdoor pools make a splash with extended hours, the sweet relief of a cool dip on a sweltering night. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. We begin tonight with a Brampton neighborhood on edge after another terrifying crash on their quiet suburban street. Incredibly, no one was seriously injured, but people in the area are demanding action. Greg Ross has our top story tonight.
The shocking moment, a car skidded off of Williams Parkway in Brampton, crashed through a fence and onto Commodore Drive. This man was on his porch and witnessed the whole thing.
And I saw this shoo, literally it was flying. It was flying and just...
In fact, it flew right into his car, which was parked on the street.
It's gone. It's total lost, finish.
Commodore Drive is a residential street where a number of young children live.
Right here. My daughters are always rollerblading and biking here.
Fortunately, this woman's daughters were inside at the time and no other residents were hurt. Even the driver of the car walked away with minor injuries, but residents say he didn't seem concerned about his own health.
No, he was concerned about his car being wrecked.
This is not the first time this has happened on this street. On May 16th, less than 2 months ago, another car crashed through this same fence at night. It hit 2 other parked cars, one belonging to Syed Anwar and the other his wife.
Yeah, they were right here. He smashed the 2 cars, went through them, and he ended up there, through that fence.
In both cases, speed appears to be a big factor, with the cars taking this curve on Williams Parkway too fast.
It's not safe. They're always racing on the streets. At nighttime, you can hear the cars racing around. It's really not safe.
Street racing is a problem police say they've been having right across Peel region. Last year, between April 1st and June 1st, police say they received 270 calls to report street racing. In that same time period this year, police say those calls have more than doubled, and they believe that the COVID-19 pandemic is the reason.
Yeah, my humble opinion, the open roadways have made it easier for individuals that partake in street racing activities and organizers of these events to take advantage of the open roadways during COVID.
Some residents in this neighborhood are calling for the city to put photo radar on Williams Parkway. But Mayor Patrick Brown says they are only permitted to do that in designated safety zones with schools and community centers. But he says he is prepared to increase police presence in the area.
Like given the video and the 2 incidents on Williams Parkway, that we're going to need a similar blitz on Williams Parkway to ensure that there is significant consequences and significant penalties for reckless behavior, reckless driving.
The 28-year-old driver of that car that crashed through this fence has been charged with dangerous driving, and police say those charges could have been far more severe had he injured somebody or, God forbid, killed somebody. And police say they're also investigating whether or not racing was involved in this crash, and they say if it was, they'll be looking to charge anyone else who was involved. Greg Ross, CBC News, Brampton.
To Markham now, and a major house fire to tell you about. It took 30 firefighters nearly 3 hours to put out the blaze this morning. In the end, the home was declared a total loss, and its occupants only made it out thanks to a neighborhood dog.
Shortly after 2 o'clock this morning, I heard our dog Georgia getting up and going out onto the landing, which was unusual for her. I thought, oh, something's up.
Once Tony Farr realized the house next door was on fire, he called 911. Officers arrived to find the house engulfed in flames and learned the family was still inside the home. So they rushed into the burning building to get them out wearing only their police uniforms. 4 people and the family dog were rescued. 2 people were in wheelchairs. They were all taken to the hospital and treated for smoke inhalation, as was one of the police officers. 3 other officers were treated at the scene. Living through a pandemic is nightmare enough. Now tack on a heat wave and no running water for days. That's the reality for one Toronto homeowner who is tonight blaming the city for not assessing the problem quickly enough. Kelda Yoon has their story.
A living nightmare.
That's how Kathleen Lee describes her current situation. On Sunday morning, she and her husband returned home to find
There's raw sewage flowing into my basement. So I call 311.
5 days later, crews remain on Eastwood Road. The problem still not fixed.
We've been going to a friend's house to shower, which we really shouldn't be doing in COVID. My neighbor next door, her pipes are now affected. She's been told, don't use anything, your pipes will burst if you do.
The root of the problem lies in the old infrastructure. The houses on the street were built back in 1914. 10 of them share the same party line that connects to the city's sewer system.
And then when you have a backup, it can be really bad.
Area Councillor Brad Bradford first caught wind of the problem on Tuesday. This evening, Toronto Water said the immediate problem has been located. A large pipe had collapsed. Work to fix it will extend into tomorrow.
It really is just a Band-Aid. This is still a fundamental problem of 10 houses connected to a party line.
Lee agrees. She says it's the city's responsibility to replace the old infrastructure.
The city's third-party contractor, he told us this is a mess, the city's going to have to dig it up.
But the city says it's more complicated than that. Bradford says further assessment will have to be done to determine what lies on private property and what lies on city property.
Just assess where all of the piping lies underground, sending in the cameras, understanding, geolocating that. And then we're going to have a conversation with obviously the residents here and Toronto Water, City Legal, figure out who's responsible for what and how we move forward.
If it's determined to be a private matter, Lee says it would cost her and her neighbors $30,000 each to get off the party line.
I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
A new smartphone app meant to help trace COVID-19 cases in Ontario was supposed to be ready for download today, but the Premier is blaming Ottawa for its delay.
We're ready to go. I know the feds want to bring it right across the country. They're working on that, but Ontario's ready. So we'll wait for the feds to launch this, and we support them.
Doug Ford says the federal government is waiting on other provinces to ensure the project can launch nationally. The Bluetooth-based app will notify users if they've been within 2 meters of a person who has tested positive for the virus for an extended period of time. There is no word yet on when the app will end up launching. The province announced new funding today to help protect the most vulnerable through the pandemic.
We're investing an additional $150 million to improve homeless shelters and create opportunities for long-term care housing.
And that new money will go to renovating homeless shelters to make physical distancing easier. It'll also help municipalities and Indigenous community partners pay for longer-term solutions around homelessness. The funding brings the province's Social Services Relief Fund to $350 million and is part of a package for municipalities to help cope with the pandemic. Masks are now mandatory on the TTC. It is one of several changes coming into effect today to protect transit users.
It would be really helpful to, stop the virus spreading.
Some people don't have the means to get a mask. I think it's going to be hard to enforce.
It's all for our good health, and I think we all should follow this.
There are some exemptions to the rule. Children under 2 and those with medical considerations do not have to wear a mask. The TTC says it doesn't believe strict enforcement will be necessary, but they'll be monitoring for compliance. Also starting today, all-door bus boarding and the return of fare boxes to reduce overcrowding. The TTC says ridership is up nearly 40% on buses and 20% on streetcars and subways. And a few changes are also coming to GO Transit. Clear plastic dividers between seats are being tested out on 5 trains and 30 buses. There will also be new directional signage like in grocery stores and designated entry and exit doors. We have a clearer picture tonight of who's being infected with COVID-19 in Toronto. And that intel is leading some advocates and politicians to reimagine the city's response to the virus. Lorenda Redekop has those details.
This area in the city's northwest was already listed as a COVID hot zone. New data presented to the Board of Health today gives a more complete picture of who's being infected. The new stats find people with low incomes are most affected by COVID-19. People living in the most crowded homes are also more likely to have tested positive. The report also breaks down cases by race. It shows Black, South Asian, and Latin American residents are disproportionately affected.
What I think we need to do is we need to get a lot of boots on the ground in these neighborhoods to find a way to contain this bug, to locate it and then isolate it.
The local councillor suggested a large church near Jane and Finch be turned into a mobile testing center. The numbers show people who've tested positive more commonly have jobs in factories, retail or customer service, or in certain sectors of healthcare.
There's likely a second wave coming.
Today, an impassioned plea from the chair of the Board of Health.
It's the people working in precarious frontline jobs who are most at risk. It's people living in crowded, underhoused settings who are most at risk. It is racialized people who are most at risk. And so while I desperately want to return to normal, and we desperately want this period in history to end, returning to normal isn't good enough for those we need to take care of.
This community advocate from the Jane and Finch area says the long-time need for more government support is even more critical now.
People have no choice, that they are choosing to literally put themselves in danger or their lives on the line because of fear of not being able to live and provide.
Testing, she says, is part of it.
We need doctors that speak our languages, our community's languages, so we can move aside the shame and stigma that comes with COVID.
The Board of Health voted unanimously to encourage all 3 levels of government to work together to offer free housing to those who test positive and have no way of self-isolating. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, the Blue Jays are flying home for the summer after getting special permission from the federal government. More on that is coming up, and we'll take you to Sunnyside Pool, open late tonight to help residents beat the heat. Plus,
with heat like we're seeing, no wonder heat warnings in place. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. Time to take a look at what the symptoms of heat exhaustion are. We'll do that coming up after the break.
the Toronto Blue Jays announced today they'll resume their training camp at the Rogers Centre. The team will quarantine at the stadium and the adjoining hotel. Players, coaches, and staff will arrive on a chartered flight this weekend. Still, no final decision has been made on where the Jays will play their games this season, but the team wants to play here in Toronto. The Jays shut down its training facility in Florida more than 2 weeks ago after several players and staff tested positive for COVID-19. The abbreviated regular season is slated to start in about 3 weeks. And here's a refreshing live look for you. This is Gus Ryder Outdoor Pool at Sunnyside Park, one of 6 outdoor pools in Toronto allowed to stay open until 11:45 tonight. And clearly people are taking them up on the offer for in the middle of some oppressive heat, even at this late hour. And we spoke to some kids taking a late dip tonight.
It's nice and cold for the water. Yeah, it's like a heat wave today.
So it's a lot of fun, especially on hot days, and it's perfect for the summer.
Yeah, and we're thankful that they work in the middle of the night because it's busy in the day.
I've never been to a pool at night, so.
Absolutely unbearable heat out there for a lot of people today. Let's get Colette Kennedy in now. And Colette, while some people might love this heat, it can certainly be dangerous as well.
It can be, Chris, and that's why it's always a good idea to just kind of go over what some of the symptoms are of heat exhaustion. So I just wanted to show you what those look like. Dizziness is certainly one of those if you get a little bit lightheaded. A rapid heartbeat is another, and headache, and then if you're just kind of feeling faint. Those are things to look for, and we do have the heat warning that's in place. It's not just for the GTA. I mean, have a look at this. It stretches from eastern Ontario through our region and all the way back towards southwestern Ontario, and the timeline is kind of different for different parts, but certainly for us in Toronto, we are looking at this extending through the end of the weekend, and it may well get extended into next week because I'm seeing these conditions hanging in there well into next week in terms of our temperatures being in the 30s, humidex values being in the upper 30s towards the low 40s, and you don't even really get relief overnight. So some of the daytime highs from today, and I do want to point out that at downtown Toronto, we were at 35.5, not just a hotspot in Ontario at one point today, but in all of Canada. So significant heat, no question about it. Also some active weather into eastern Ontario from this afternoon, and those are some of the remnant cells. So you see some of that even hanging on into tomorrow morning. Now, what we'll be seeing along the lakeshore is towards the afternoon tomorrow, we may get a few areas seeing some pop-up showers or thunderstorms. In some ways, you almost have to consider yourself lucky to get some moisture because we have such dry conditions, and we'll be seeing that over the next period well into the month of July. So just be watching for that, but primarily it's a dry forecast, just a 30% chance of getting into some showers and thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon. And looking ahead into the weekend, and it's really looking quite dry too. Overnight tonight, there you go, 20 to 21, your overnight lows in southwestern Ontario, your temperatures, but look at the humidex. That's likely more important here with some scattered, really almost isolated showers and thunderstorms. Our temperatures tonight throughout the GTA look like this, all around the Golden Horseshoe, in fact. And look at this, the humidex values, again, really approaching 40 for tomorrow. And then here we go through that 5-day forecast, and you can see it carries on. This is why I say, Chris, I would expect that that heat warning will get extended beyond Sunday and those conditions prevail, and that's why we all do have to kind of take it easy and look for all those kind of things that could show us that maybe we're looking at some heat exhaustion.
Absolutely good advice, but I remember complaining about snow well into May, so I won't be doing any complaining tonight.
I'm not complaining either.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
People often deal with the heat by escaping the mainland, packing the beaches at the Toronto Islands. But many island residents worry they're bringing more than just their bathing suits and beach bags. Ali Chiasson explains the fresh COVID concerns.
So far, business is okay. We're at half capacity. As normally we can take 12 people. We try to keep it about 6.
If you've got a business that depends on the island being open, you're happy to see folks ferrying or water taxiing over.
We're happy back on the water. It's been beautiful weather for the last couple of weeks, and some people are turning out, which is really good.
But if you're caring for an elderly loved one who lives here.
So this is my dad's house.
Very nice to meet you, Bill.
Good to meet you, too.
Or if you're immunocompromised yourself.
I have not been out of my yard 5 times since February, and I haven't been off the island since that time.
Seeing the ferries pull up again is unnerving.
I'm a quadriplegic, and if I got sick, I'd end up having to go to hospital.
Laura Beard says there may be physical distancing on board the ferries, but when they dock and people head for the beach.
There was absolutely no social distancing.
Beard says Canada Day was bad.
Overcrowding. My street was like the 401, people coming up and down the street.
Gretchen Rohde's father, Bill, is a 95-year-old veteran. He doesn't worry easily.
Well, we're far enough away from it, I think.
But Rohde is a physician, so she does worry.
If we have an outbreak, then what was the price? And who's going to pay that price? Well, I know who's going to be paying. It'll be my elderly father and Laura Beard and Linda Wilson's mom. They'll be the ones paying that price.
Today, the city's top doctor addressed the islanders' concerns.
So we certainly encourage people to go out and enjoy that space, knowing and having some reassurance that virus transmission is significantly reduced within those outdoor settings. With respect to those who are older, we would recommend that, trying to keep that physical distance continues to be important, even in the outdoor settings.
Today we learned there are 153 new COVID-19 cases in the entire province. That curve is continuing to flatten, and health officials say the numbers will continue to trend downward as long as we follow their advice for physical distancing, hand washing, wearing masks when indoors, all things you should be doing anywhere, but also visiting Toronto Island. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, we'll speak to the artists behind this Black Lives Matter mural in Kensington Market, an attempt to shine a light on anti-Black racism. Stay with us. More than a dozen artists gathered in Kensington Market on Canada Day to paint Black Lives Matter in bold, colorful letters on the street. They told us it's the responsibility of artists to speak out against injustices. Take a look.
It's all about Black Lives Matter and just bringing awareness of the current situation that is happening right now, all the racial injustices. My name is Jackie Comrie. I'm a mural artist, and I use color as a tool for wellness and mental health. It's not only about transforming a space just for beautification purposes, but really it's just all about using it as a tool for mental health. And in the state of the world right now, I think everybody can use some color. So we're about, I believe it's 14 to 15 artists, and we're all putting our creativity together to bring awareness through our work. We're just saying it's time, enough is enough.
We knew Toronto and Canada is a multicultural city, multicultural country. And we're coming together basically to say that we won't accept anti-Black racism. Each of the artists have complete free reign of how they want to address each letter. I'm going to be doing like an African pattern design, basically reflecting on us as people of African descent and bringing that into the work.
Myself being part of a marginalized community, a lot of us artists here are part of marginalized communities, and I think art is sort of our activism, and it's an important message. We've seen it happen in so many different cities, across the world. Murals similar to this that are happening on the floor, and I thought it, made sense for Toronto to have something as well.
A beautiful initiative, and that is our show for you tonight. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night.